Happy politics, and welcome back to the podcast that's better than a tropical vacation, Casey Polly Hot Stove. My name is Maclean K. I'm still the editor-in-chief of the Orca, yes, even in 2021, and I'm joined in a socially distant manner by...
It's Jordan Maitman, VP Communications for the Independent Contractors Business Association and Green Bay Packer fan, number one in the NFC, bye week coming up, 2 wins away from the Super Bowl, 13-time world champion Green Bay Packers. There you go.
That was not a topic I was prepared to discuss today, but I am very, very happy for you and your fans, and not bitter at all.
I also have to highlight something else on video besides the cheese head I was just wearing. This mug I got from my daughter, who pointed out that I have like a hockey dad mug that someone gave me at some point. She thought I should have a student council dad mug, and I am proud to bring it onto the podcast as a new fixture, my student council dad mug.
Oh, damn. I got a mug for Christmas as well from my son, who's in kindergarten, and it looks like it, and I'm very proud of it. And I have it in my bedroom because it's a treasure that I'm never going to drink out of. It's one of those things I think would fall apart, so yeah.
Yes, or there's so much paint on it, that you'd be poisoned. One or the other.
Yeah. Basically. Yeah. But I loved it, so I'm happy.
Maclean, I hope you had a Merry Christmas, by the way. I hope you and your family had a nice time together, and a Happy New Year to all the watchers and listeners out there as well.
Yes, that's a good note. I'd almost forgotten. So yes, Happy New Year to all of our fans and listeners, and that's not always a complete overlap of those two groups.
And my usual hello to the poor NDP scribe who is sitting there transcribing this so that a cabinet minister can ignore it when it lands on their desk.
That's true.
Kudos to you.
Speaking of, there's only one story to lead off this week. I will tell you that I took a complete social media break over the holidays, and I mean complete. I didn't check the internet. I did no Twitter, no Instagram, none of that stuff. So when I logged back in on Monday morning,
surprise!
I almost wish that I could write like a live blog of the 10 or 15 minutes of my journey of discovery through everything that happened. And I'm sure I've still missed some things. But I mean, and I'm talking, of course, about the various and sundry politicians of all political stripes who traveled over the break. My God, Jordan, I don't understand. I am legitimately speechless. For the most part, we're not talking about, bad people or stupid people, but man, were there some bad decision making on display there.
This has been astonishing for me to watch unfold. Now, you saw it in reverse order, no doubt, because you probably went down your feet. But, it started with this, I think it's Rod Phillips, this guy, finance minister, second most powerful cabinet minister in Ontario, the most powerful province in Confederation. And it turns out he buggered off, I think, to Mexico. And what were you thinking? And then Doug Ford, to his credit, said, okay, here's the consequence for this decision. Doug Ford, who knew about the trip and didn't make any bones about it, but still said, nah, you're stupid, canned him. So all of a sudden you have the baseline. If you've done this, you're in big trouble. And then the phone started ringing, I'm sure, in every single politician's office, every single comms officer office. Where is your politician right now? Now, British Columbia, apparently, everyone was at home towing the line, which is great. Alberta, not so much. 7 very senior officials, i.e. the chief of staff to the premier, and cabinet minister, and then MLAs, have been found out to have been traveling everywhere from Hawaii to Mexico. There's one in Mexico who apparently still has not been gotten a hold of.
Right. I mean, at this point, stay under the radar.
No rush. Yeah, no rush, buddy. Hang out there for as long as you can. But I've been to an all-inclusive in Mexico, and it's true. Like, there's like one pocket of free internet in the lobby, and if you don't get it through a certain window, then you never do it. And then the rest of the world is cut off from you, so you'd have no idea. But surely someone else from Alberta has shown up there and been like, buddy, you might want to check the internet. Anyways, astonishingly bad decision making. I don't know how, loopholism is something that Jody has written about in The Middle.
Yeah.
And, the loopholier than now attitude, like, well, she didn't really say this, and my situation, and so people look for the little loopholes. And it's human nature, I get it. Look, there isn't a human alive who wouldn't rather be on a beach in Mexico than in the suburbs of Red Deer. There isn't a human alive who would rather be in Maui for their traditional family vacation than a traditional family vacation in Fort Mac. We get it. But we all sacrificed, You asked us to sacrifice, and we did it. And then you, the ruling elite, which is the sense of this, go. And now I think it's been so many of them, it's a pox in all their houses. I don't think, just because none of Rachel Notley's crew in NDP land in Alberta went, I don't think she gets a free pass because Nikki Ashton went. So there's all this kind of churn going on. And I think a lot of people are like, told you, these politicians, they just tell us to do everything. We pay, they play. It's crazy and unfair. And I'm just astonished at the bad decision making that went into this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're right in that there were people from all the major political parties. I think, again, I'm coming at this all at once on Monday morning. I don't know of any Greens, but that said, there were Liberals, there was the NDP MP, and there was Conservative MPs and MLAs, and a senator, apparently. But, I mean, in Alberta, there does seem to be a particular concentration that it's tough. And I have to think that I can't imagine that Jason Kenney or anyone in the government in Alberta, was saying wink, wink to his cabinet minister. I don't buy that for a second. I do buy that there was no conference call beforehand saying, don't do this. If you have plans, cancel them. Yeah. That they thought that was just, that doesn't need to be said.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's what happened, but that's my theory. And I bet I'm right that they thought that it wouldn't be necessary to tell everyone that. And it turns out it was.
Yeah. Well, look, there's been some turnover in the Premier's office in Alberta. Our friend Katie Merrifield left as, I think she was the DCOM, came back here. There was, or their DCOM switched to Brock Harrison. So there was some gap there. Apparently, one of the letters from the Municipal Affairs Minister basically just informed the Premier's office that another MLA was going to cover her off during Christmas, but didn't specifically say, because I'm on a beach in Hawaii for a traditional family vacation, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Anyways, so you have that kind of gap. It's confounding to me because Jason Kenney, grew up in the two ways. He was a former Canadian Taxpayers Federation person, so he's highly attuned to populism, highly attuned to fiscal responsibility, to making sure, to conservative values, to making sure that, kind of the little bit of a bent of anti-elitism that now runs through the Conservative Party, especially in Alberta. He's very sensitive to that. Plus, then he was a cabinet minister for several terms under Stephen Harper, who, not known for his, lackadaisical way of managing caucus or cabinet, clearly, but, I do wonder if maybe Kenney kind of chafed against some of what Harper did, and so he's given more of a free hand to his ministers. I don't know, and you'd have to really be in tune with Alberta politics. But here's the biggest loss. Like municipal affairs ministers, and I'm sorry to offend those who think that being a minister is the greatest thing in the history of the world. Municipal affairs ministers are a dime a dozen. Parliamentary secretaries even more so. But we have the ministers of states even more. But we have this issue where now the chief of staff to Jason Kenney is right. And anyone who's worked tangentially in politics or for government knows the power of the chief of staff to the premier. Chief of staff to the municipal affairs minister, Chief of staff to the premier, holy crap, that's the number one. That is the person that you have got to run everything through. And that is a huge loss to Jason Kenney because, you lose that voice, you lose one of the few people, who you have given the authority and the right to say, hey, wake up, this isn't right. Someone put Kenney in a bad spot, whether it was him himself or a comms decision, by having a press conference on January 1st when he didn't know how many of his folks were actually out of the province. The whip let him down because that's a whip's job to make sure they know where everyone is at all times. It just is like a complete systemic failure. Now, I think part of it is, as governments have got to be exhausted. You watch... obviously we watch Dr. Bonnie and Adrian Dix more closely here. You watch them, they have aged, and is that bad to say? I'm saying more about Dix, Dr. Bonnie, more about Adrian, but they've aged. You watch the comment threads in the live Facebooks now, and there's a lot of talk of they look emotional, they look exhausted, are they okay? It wears on you. 9 months wears on me. Having to listen to the press conference. Imagine giving those for 9 months. And I think maybe there's decision fatigue in Alberta. Maybe, you're just exhausted. So many things have fallen by the wayside. Jason Kenney didn't come back and unite the conservative movement in Alberta in order to manage a pandemic. He did because he had very specific conservative values he wanted to bring back to Alberta, the Alberta advantage, get us back going again. And all of that agenda is gone now. And every day it's COVID, 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 COVID. And every day, frankly, in Alberta is you're fucking up COVID, you're fucking up COVID, you're fucking up COVID.
Yeah.
And so I do wonder if there's just like, they took their eye off the ball, like, exhaustion plays into it. So many, it's just a complete systemic failure.
Yeah, and I think much of it could have been averted with, as I say, something like a conference call beforehand saying, by the way, if you have succumbed to temptation, easy enough to do in the internet age, a couple clicks of your mouse and you've booked flights to Mexico. I get it. We probably all had those moments of weakness. Not that I have booked any flights to Mexico, but if you have done so, now's the time.
Yes.
Cancel them and stay.
So I have a theory, though, because the Rocky Mountains are a dividing line between us and Alberta, and there were 7 or 8 of these folks in Alberta who went, and no one in BC. And I have a 4-pronged theory, Maclean. Think of it as a stool with 4 prongs as to why that is the case, why BC avoided this. Because every single, the Greens, NDP, and BC Liberals have all confirmed that not a single one of their folks were out of the country. Now, out of the province, who knows? No, I'm just kidding. I don't try to stir anything up. But not out of the country. So here's my 4-pronged reason why it didn't happen here, but it happened there. Okay. First of all, we just had an election.
Yes.
New MLAs, new cabinet. It was a surprise election to everyone except the NDP, who were probably told it could come at any time. So don't plan anything for Q4, because if we're not going in October, then we'll go in February. Like, be around your constituency. That's one. Fear of Dr. Bonnie. Dr. Bonnie has an exalted status here that no other public health officer has anywhere in the country. The shine's coming off a bit, but still, no one else's flu vogs made up for them. Horgan's plan, did Christmas dinner plan right before Christmas. This was short notice, but that sent a real ripple out there. Like, whoa, even talking about having your daughter-in-law and son over for Christmas caused a ruckus. So if you're on the fence about, maybe taking a drive to, I don't know, wherever, you didn't. And then the final one is, like, look, no one, like I said, no one can begrudge someone for wanting to leave Edmonton. Leaving BC on vacation, like, it's a little bit more temperate in much of British Columbia. For the folks in the rural ridings where maybe it's a little bit colder, they've just come out of a session, they want to be home with their family. So you don't have that same maybe temptation.
Well, I can tell you, as a born and raised Albertan who has lived in Victoria now for, this will be my 11th year, relatives come and visit you here instead of vice versa. So there may be something to what you're saying. I think there's a lot of truth in your 4-pronged theory. I think it's a collection of all those things. It is remarkable that BC has avoided the turmoil that's happening in Alberta and Ontario to a lesser extent, because that was the first and in some ways most comical.
Yeah. Now, this week will be interesting because all the community newspaper reporters are back at work. And it's a slow news week. You have assessments. That's always a big story for community newspapers because they come out the first week of January. So whose property is up, whose property is down. But you can bet they're all calling counselors and just kind of poking, like, hey, what'd you do on your Christmas vacation? And if, amateur sleuths out there, no doubt checking social media to see what's happening. But we'll see. Hopefully the mayors and councillors, who generally don't have the same kind of disposable income, perhaps, as the MLAs do, cabinet ministers.
Can you imagine a political career, even one at that level, being sunk because not only were you, I don't know what the word is, callous enough to book an overseas vacation during the pandemic, contrary to advice and guidelines, but then being dumb enough to Instagram it?
Yes.
I mean...
Well, part of the Ontario guy was that he had canned videos in front of his, we're doing video here, obviously, not the fanciest setup here, but this guy had the perfectly curated thing, right? The easy chair by the fireplace with the stockings hung with care, with the little Charlie Brown tree with the pop of red against the white fireplace there, and another little gingerbread house perfectly done with little pops of color. Like, it was magnificently beautiful. And released on Christmas Day and that sort of thing.
It was well crafted.
Exactly. So, not sure that was helpful. I think that sort of disingenuousness. It was one thing. I think one of the Alberta folks had a message from the legislature, like they were clearly taped it in the legislature. Well, no one, it's Christmas. No one thinks you're at the legislature. We know you've pre-taped this, but there was something about the aura of that one that felt very pre-taped.
Well, and I mentioned I wish I'd could have done like a very quick live blog of my journey of discovery. I saw Rod Phillips is his name.
Yes.
They had the opposition there released a Zoom that I guess he had done while he was there, and they were saying, well, you could hear the waves in the background, and I thought, well, that must be a joke.
Nope.
Obviously, like, that can't be true. No, and then you listen to the audio, and there's no denying what that is. There's no ocean in Ontario, folks. None.
No.
Even Lake Superior doesn't sound like that.
No, like, dude, close a window. Like, go somewhere quiet. I mean, man, oh man. Like, it's just completely tone deaf, completely out of touch, completely elitist. Now, I will say this, like, politicians and municipal staff are notorious for taking time off at Christmas, like, and going somewhere. During the, not to always go back to the TransLink referendum, but why not? It was a substantial victory for the people of British Columbia. Going back to the TransLink thing, one of the great advantages we had is that, people like me were so broke we couldn't go away at Christmas. So I was running basically through the campaign right before Christmas, all through Christmas, January, that first week back where there was no stuff. And there were no politicians and very few executive directors of all these groups that, supported the tax. Very few of them were around. And we were able to kind of cut into the narrative. And by the time they got back, all these reporters were like, thank God Jordan was around and giving us material. We had nothing to write about. And, the whole tenor of the conversation had changed from where they were way ahead to basically dead even. They're notoriously bad for going away at that time of year. Part of it is this, there's no session, it's Christmas break. Yeah. And that's fine in a normal year, I guess. Like, sure, go to Hawaii. That's great. I mean, it's whatever. But in a year where you've told everyone to shut down, where people have lost their livelihoods and lost their lives, where we're told that going out and having family over at Christmas was a way to kill grandma, like, this is not cool.
Yeah,
it's the unforgivable sin. It's the unforgivable sin in politics.
It's the what? Sorry.
It is the unforgivable sin, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I saw somebody on Twitter today say, in response, well, people will get over it by the election, and the response this person had was, I don't know, how long will it take me to get over not going to my grandmother's funeral?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fair. I can't judge that.
That's a tough comment. That's bang on.
Right?
Yep.
All right, well, we should move on.
Yes.
The other big story that came out yesterday was the province released its, I was going to say model, its plan for vaccination for the next 3 months, I believe. Mm-hmm. It caused a little bit of a stir, I guess. It broke down the numbers that target demographics, I guess you'd call them.
Yeah.
What jumped out for you?
Well, first, this is going slow, painfully slow. And the hilarious thing is Thomas Drance, who covers the Vancouver Canucks and is known as an analytics guy for The Athletic, started doing the analytics on how slow this rollout is. And it's like, it's going to take 5 years for us all to get vaccinated at this pace. Now, of course, as analytics people will say, it's going to regress to the norm at some point, and it'll speed up. But look, it's frustrating to Canadians that there are vaccines sitting in fridges and not in people's arms. And yeah, we get it. It's a big logistical challenge. You've had months to prep for this. And this has been the only hope keeping a lot of people going through this. And you're telling me it's in that fridge and not in the person who's taking care of grandma's arm? It does not make any sense. I think it highlights how wonky and precarious our supply chain is on this. The federal government ordered a bunch of these vaccines, but did not pay to get us into the priority queue. Israel is miles ahead of us. The United States, the basket case United States, miles and miles ahead of us when it comes to vaccinations. That is a big problem. The other thing that's, we'll get to the issue I know that you really want me to go on about in a second, but the other thing that stood out to me was, look, the NDP have also had time to fix and address long-term care issues. They have failed miserably. Adrian Dix looked us in the eye in April and May and June and said, these lockdowns are for a reason. You can't see your grandparents or parents because, we're taking care of them. We are going to get a handle on this. We're going to keep people out. We're going to make sure we have separate care. The lack of rapid testing, the lack of testing long-term care workers every day or every 2 days or even every week is embarrassing. It is a complete error. And now we are seeing huge death rates. Little Mountain, by the way, we think we're seeing huge death rates. We don't really know where they are because the government's not releasing them by facility anymore unless the media spend days and days and days and days hounding them, as they did with Little Mountain. Little Mountain, 82% of the residents there have had a positive test for COVID. 82%, and 38 have already died. This only came out because the media, Marcella Bernardo, who I've been critical of for asking some questionable questions during other press conferences, she went hard on this over and over and over again. Ian Young, those folks demanding to these numbers, and finally it came out. Whatever we were trying there in long-term care failed. And at some point, government needs to be held accountable for that. We get it, it's a virus, it's hard to keep out. We have rapid tests sitting in warehouses that could be used, and even if they're only 85% effective or 90% effective, that's still catching 90% of the cases that are going in. And I think a lot of people are like, why aren't we using these?
Yeah, well, I mean, I never understood that argument. I mean, yes, it's not 100% effective. Wearing a mask is not 100% effective, right? That doesn't mean you don't do it.
Exactly.
You do everything you can to reduce the risk. So I've been a little mystified at is it just reluctance on long-term, on rapid testing? I'm not sure. I find it baffling.
It's confounding. And, there's a group on Twitter who are very militant about, testing, rapid tests. And I think, they made their point so forcefully, a lot of us were like, well, there must be a good reason, right? Like, what is it? Not me anymore. I'm fully on board with the rapid testers. Like, test now, test often, test the people who are caring in for long-term care patients, test our healthcare workers. Heard of an outbreak at Ridge Meadows, hospital which has had several outbreaks now. They're not even testing the staff anymore, which makes no sense at all. The virus is in there. It's a designated outbreak. You're not testing your staff to make sure that they don't have it. Like, it's mind-boggling to me, these decisions that are going on, especially when we have rapid tests there. Like, they're available. Let's use them. We use them in the World Juniors. How many positive tests were there in the bubble in the World Juniors? 0.
Yeah.
Germans came in with some. They got caught. They went into quarantine. Hasn't been a positive case since. So this works. Testing works. But for some reason, I don't know what it is. If it's PHO or if it's Mr. Dix or both, they just do not believe in that.
Yeah, well, and the decision-making process, it has been a little opaque. And so this is probably something we'll find out after the fact or get more information on. But you're right. For right now, we don't know where that's coming from and why. And from the outside, it is hard to understand exactly what the reluctance is. Why?
Yeah, and look, Terry Lake heads up the Care Providers Association now in BC. Very loud proponent. Let's test our workers. But you need tests to do it. And the government's sitting on them. So that's the problem. Now let's talk about what really bothered me. I mean, that really bothered me, but let's talk about what really, really, really left me going, what? So she's going through the slide of who's in the first group, and most of them are no-brainers. Elders, people living long-term care workers, healthcare workers. Oh, totally, 100%. Let's do it. Absolutely makes sense. First Nations have seen several very frightening outbreaks. They're high up on the list. Perfect. I have no problem with any of that. Then there's just kind of a throwaway, people living in communal living, including prisons. Global News then goes and reports all these things. And then they kind of casually throw out this direct quote, and people living in communal settings, such as prison. Maclean. This I found triggering. I was triggered by this. We are going to vaccinate prisoners before we vaccinate bus drivers. I'm not saying, the correctional workers, vaccinate them in first wave. Absolutely. No problem at all. But saying that prisoners are living in communal settings and therefore should get this jab before, there are going to be people, there are going to be domestic abusers in this province. Now, provincial corrections, basically 2 years less a day has to be your sentence. They're trying very hard to get as many of them out into the community as possible because it costs $25,000 for whatever to house them in correctionals and a few $100s to house them out in the public. So they're trying their best. But these are domestic abusers, sex offenders. There's white collar crime too. But you're telling me that a rapist is going to get the jab, going to get the vaccine before their victim is. You're telling me that a domestic abuser is going to have the vaccine before the family they abused is going to get it. that the person who, pulled a gun and robbed a bank, I don't know if people rob banks anymore, but you know what I mean, is going to get it before, the drug dealer is going to get it before the people, that they stole from. How is that right? Like, does that not, like, I don't know how that's justifiable. And I had a couple bleeding hearts who I'm sure have good intentions come on Twitter and I have no problem with this because they live in communal settings and it's spreading through there. So do construction workers in work camps. People still aren't going back to transit at the rates they have. Teachers in front of students. We've seen the BC Teachers Federation terrified. Earl Marriott had a big outbreak. Like, can we vaccinate teachers ahead of these people? No. Bus drivers, can we? No. Work camp workers? No. But we're going to do prisoners? Like, I was astonished. And then I was further astonished that no one in the media, with their very sparse questioning time, I get that, said, yo, Dr. Henry, hold up a sec. Are you saying prisoners are going to get it? Like, what do you mean by communal settings? Does that include housing co-ops? Does that include, like, Maclean, you probably interact with lots of folks in your apartment building.
I do.
Construction work camps now have been ratcheted down by an order that kind of came out 2 days before Christmas. Merry Christmas, BC economy. We're gutting your construction industry in major oil and gas projects. Like, I just don't get it. And then I looked even further. I'm like, okay, so we're going to give the vaccine to folks in prison ahead of seniors living on their own. So, there's a friend of mine in the office here. Her 101-year-old grandma lives on her own. Oh, way we're reading on her slides, the prisoner is going to get it before a 101-year-old grandma who hasn't been out of her house in months, who the family's bringing food to and trying to take care of, but a socially distant way because they're terrified of losing her. Every single prisoner in this province will get the stick before any 79-year-old will. How is that right? Like, like I said, I was astonished by these politicians traveling. This just flabbergasts me. Like, I can't, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit right. Like, am I just a mean old curmudgeonly?
Well, you could be both. You can be right and a mean old curmudgeon. But here's I've pulled up the slide that the province distributed yesterday. And this is in the February-March numbers. They're planning to have approximately 400,000 individuals vaccinated that month. And that includes, of that 400,000, it includes 40,000 of those living in communal situations, but that includes people experiencing homelessness, group homes, mental health, residential care, and provincial correctional facilities. That's up to 40,000. So that's 10%.
Right.
Now, we don't know what percentage of that 10% are prisoners, and I don't have the foggiest idea, to be honest with you. But you're right. I mean, the optics, especially given that, you mentioned work camps. That is a communal setting.
Yeah.
In not like prison, but like prison in that it's a large group of people living and working together in very tight spaces, and which have seen outbreaks.
Yeah.
And are crucial to the provincial economy. This is just true. And so, yeah, you would hope that would be bumped up the priority list. Again, yeah, you're right. It's tough. I fully accept that your run-of-the-mill prisoner, regardless of his or her crime, is probably at higher risk than me and you. But it's tough to swallow.
Yeah, if they stole my car and that's why they're in there. So many years ago, when the BC Liberals were in charge in the early days, I got an interview with the BC Parole Board. They were looking for folks to sit on the parole board. So they interviewed me whether I'd be a good fit. And I think I answered every question fine. And then it came to the, could you sit there if your child had been a victim of crime? And I was like, my kids were young, really young at the time. And I was like, heck no, I couldn't. Sorry, I could sit here and lie and pretend like I could. I couldn't. It would be very difficult to separate that situation from this. And guess what? I didn't get appointed. And life went on. And I ended up being elected to Township Council in Langley. Everything worked out. But that was kind of like, that's the same feeling. It's the first time in 15 years really I've had that feeling where it's like, something's not right here. I don't like that. Homeless camps, homeless shelters, I get it. There was an outbreak in Chilliwack, 4 homeless folks there had it. And, the advice from Fraser Health to them was, go and socially isolate. Not sure how you do that when you're homeless.
Yeah.
You don't have a hell of a lot of options. So I get, but like communal living situations such as correctional facilities, like, okay, do the workers, if people going in and out, that should be enough to stem the flow of COVID into it, if everyone, but I don't know, Maclean, like I was surprised that there wasn't more, like I feel like I was the only one tweeting about it. Like maybe there were other tweets elsewhere, or maybe people didn't really contemplate what the slide meant, but I would like the media to maybe ask if that's appropriate.
Well, I mean, I guess we'll have another chance. Are they speaking today? I think it might be tomorrow's the next one.
Tomorrow.
Yes. But we'll find out. We'll find out. I hope. Well, I say we'll find out. There's been a lot of these things that kind of come and go that don't get picked up on. Speaking of something that has
Listen,
come,
if I were the BC Conservatives,
yeah.
I would be all over this. I would be like, or, even like the BC Liberals are trying to walk a fine line about being supportive and whatnot.
Yeah.
But the BC Conservatives, like, this is meat and potatoes issue for them, right? Like, red meat for the base, like, get out there.
The red meat, yes.
Totally. And this is not something like, Mark Donnelly singing another anti-mask rally, which, by the way, he also did, in case you missed that when you were on Twitter. New Year's Eve.
Yesterday morning.
The shock of Jordan Armstrong, excellent reporter for Global, being like, I can't believe I'm seeing this again. With hilarious. But anyways, so it's not like siding with like some sort of wingnut fringe part of British Columbia. Not to say that they are, but that's how they get painted certainly with a lot of us. Although they might be, some of them are, whatever. Anyways, it's more like this is like one that I think most people would be like, hang on, okay, so grandma's not getting vaccinated, but this guy is. How does that work out? Like, I think there's political points to be scored there.
Oh, totally. And I mean, they have a little more money to score it. Hey, that's a good bridge.
What a segue.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
This is why I'm a professional. The per vote subsidy, which is the technical term for it, has been announced. You mentioned the BC Conservatives. They were awarded $63,000. The BC Greens, just under 500,000. The BC Liberals, 1.11 million. The BC NDP, $1.57 million. And I would be remiss in not mentioning the Rural BC Party receiving a whopping $1,319 exactly. I can imagine that you have some pretty strong feelings about taxpayer subsidies for political parties.
In a time where the economy is on the brink, where we need to hire more of everyone, contract tracers, healthcare workers, needle stickers, where the economy is reeling, we are going to give $3 million to the most important people in our society, political parties. The Canadian Taxpayer Federation calls this political welfare, which is exactly what it is. Not to go back to like 1980s welfare queen ideology or anything like that, but like taking $3 million from the public to spend on this, like it's craziness. There's a number of questions here I have. First of all, the rural BC party getting $1,300. That must double that's going to double their fundraising efforts. The Conservative Party, who only ran 14 candidates and basically existed to screw over the BC Liberals and elect NDPers, getting $63,000. Crazy. They didn't run candidates in 70 ridings, but they get $63,000. The Greens getting $500,000. 2 MLAs, $500,000. The BC Liberals, $1.11 million. The NDP, $1.57 million. Now, if you recall, we were the Wild West of fundraising, as Gary Mason liked to say. And then the NDP and Greens came in the minority government. They got rid of the cap donations, wouldn't let corporations and those folks donate anymore. They're going to do it through this. Still get donations, but we're going to top you up as you transition to life without corporate donations. That, of course, they never actually in the election promised that they would, or told anyone that they would top it up with public funds, but they have. And it just boggles the mind that $3 million is going to go to creating negative ads and stirring up trouble on Facebook this year, in a year where we have so many other priorities. I'm a little bit I'm different than a lot of folks in this. I say don't cap donations, don't cap anything, but disclose it before election day. Because does it really matter to you? I think I've used this before. It doesn't really matter to you, Maclean, if so-and-so candidate in Victoria City Council gets a $1,200 donation from a neo-Nazi or a $2,500 donation from a neo-Nazi. It's still a neo-Nazi. And you still want to know before the election, right? Like, I want to know before I cast my ballot for the guy who is getting the money from the neo-Nazi, whether it's $1,200 or $12 or $12,000 or $1 million. I want to know before the election. So, okay, change the culture and say no donations are allowed to happen, 96 hours before polls open, and 72 hours before polls open, you must have posted a list of every donation you've received on a website. Okay, that'd be fine. Great. And if, Peter Armstrong, I think this was one of the folks who kind of caused a lot of this reform for the MPA, gave the MPA what's close to $1 million. If that comes out, then, the politician has to deal with the political controversy of it. And they'll, the public gives the thumbs up or thumbs down on election day. But, giving public money, like some single mom working 2 jobs, paying her income taxes, and her money is going to fund, NDP negative ads against, well, it used to be Andrew Wilkinson, but against Shirley Bond or whoever the new leader is. Like that doesn't sit right with me. Nothing sits right with me anymore, Maclean.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned negative ads. This money is going not to the caucuses; it's going to the parties, and so really, it's going to fund 2 things. And I will preface this by saying I'm oversimplifying for the sake of making a point. It'll go towards operations, which basically means rent, keeping the lights on, staff, all that kind of thing, and the other chunk goes to ads and political awareness campaigns. Yeah. And that is exactly what you say. It is ads on TV, on Facebook, on all the billboards. And between elections, it's almost always attack ads. And that's not just on the NDP, that's every political party. You're not going to see an ad not in election season for a political party saying, hey, ain't we great? It doesn't land. No one cares. What you will see is, hey, those guys suck. Yeah. And that is, unfortunately, modern politics. And no matter who's paying for it, but to have public money go in towards that is a little unfortunate. I understand the argument for a per vote subsidy. I do. I get it. I appreciate the argument, and that's part of it is sort of an attempt at smoothing out the effects of first past the post. If you live in a riding that is a no hope for your preferred party, you can at least know that your vote does matter in some intangible way. Well, not intangible. There's an actual dollar amount attached to it. Fair, and as I say, I get it. But what the end product of that is exactly what you say it is. It's negative ads. It's deep dives on the other guys' Instagrams to see if they went to Mexico at Christmas. It's that kind of stuff. And it's more of a comment on modern politics than anything else. And it goes down even worse when you know that you're paying for it. Yeah.
It's also an incumbency protection program.
That is also true.
Yeah. The 2 most powerful letters in an election are re-elect. Take it from someone who ran as a new councillor and then ran for re-election. Putting that re on your elect sign is like, it is a major boost to your whole record and your kind of interactions with the public. So, this gives another, advantage to the NDP, a significant one, $460,000 more a year than the BC Liberals get. And, they got more votes. So, according to the formula, that should work. But, that's pretty good. That's like that's all close to a $2 million advantage by the time the next election rolls around. You can bet they'll be putting that to good use. That's on top of all the levers of power they have. Huge government communications budgets, which of course would never be used for partisan things, but just happen to be used for things that knock the crap out of the opposition caucus. So it is a big gap. It's another example of how the NDP are trying to entrench themselves as the natural governing party in this province for the next 10, 15 years.
Well, you're right. And you mentioned re-elect. The 3 most powerful words in American politics are re-elect the president. Yeah. And there's a reason most presidents tend to be 2 terms unless they are disasters, which is Or if there's a weird anomaly with a third candidate, which is what happened to the George Bushy elder and Ross Perot, or if events are just beyond their control and or they run up against somebody with just more charisma than them, which is kind of a weak summary of Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. But the point is, incumbency confers a lot of benefits on election campaigns.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. So you have that advantage, you have name recognition, you have structures already in place, and then now, if you're the NDP, you've got a $2 million head start for the next 4 years.
Yeah. Now, we should close on a contest that has no incumbent. Now, I will preface this next subject with I have literally heard nothing since we last spoke on it last year. And that is the I was going to say ongoing. It's not really ongoing. There are still no officially declared, and I do mean officially declared, candidates for the next leader of the BC Liberals. Have you heard anything official or unofficial that we can share or that you want to discuss now?
Yes. So I've heard there's basically two camps of leadership hopefuls. There is sort of they're pretty much in camp. That's the Kevin Falcon, Todd Stone, Michael Lee, Ellis Ross. Michael Lee has moved from the second camp, which is the kicking tires camp, into that first camp, I believe. However, Christmas just happened. It's possible they've had a change of heart, but judging by the chatter this week, doesn't seem like it. Then there's the second camp, the kicking tires camp. There's 4 people in that as well that I've heard of. Jazz Johal, Katie Merrifield. I wish Katie Merrifield. Katie, run. I'll come work for you. Renee Merrifield, Gavin Dew, Aaron Gunn. That's kind of the second camp. Aaron Gunn might be more moving now into the I'm going to do it camp.
Really?
Yeah. So kind of an interesting group. Interesting. Good mix of ethnic backgrounds. Only one female in this race-ish. She's still trying to decide. Renee Merrifield, maybe she's in, maybe she isn't. She also had a bit of a rocky ride on Twitter. I think you were still around for the Bill Thielman.
Yeah.
Bill Thielman certainly identified her as a threat. So, my advice to Renee is, look, no one kicks a dead dog. So, you're doing something right if you've got Bill Thielman paying attention to you and sniping at you. So, there's that kind of thing going on. I've heard that Falcon's support within conservative circles isn't the slam dunk runaway that maybe his team thought it was going to be among the federal conservative side. Certainly a lot of conservatives are, sitting with him now, but Kevin's kind of run into this thing where everyone's just seen Peter MacKay implode. And Peter MacKay was the Kevin Falcon of that race. For a lot of people, the parallel I don't think is perfect, but for a lot of people, there's some, kind of correlating signs. Peter MacKay was way ahead. He was, considered a serious candidate by the media. He was supposed to, walk, not run to victory. He had the best team. He had the most money. He had the most profile. He'd been out of the controversial decisions during the bad times. Yeah. There's all that kind of lining up, and so for a lot of conservatives who then saw MacKay absolutely implode, that campaign was a disaster. He was clearly rusty, out of practice, maybe didn't want it as much as other people around him wanted it. They wonder, okay, Kevin, where have you been in the past? You I think retired in 2013 from this. You've done great work in the private sector, but it's been 8 years since you've been on a ballot. Or 8 years since you were in office, and 12 years since you've been on a ballot. Is the fire still there? So I think that's a bit of a feeling out process. They're certainly not opposing him, but Michael Lee is a definite threat to split that vote, that conservative vote in the organization. So for Falcon, he's got to come out with this is how, you guys know me, I'm a conservative, always have been. Here's how we go forward, and here's how we reunite some of those folks who've gone off to the BC Conservatives to make sure they never get $63,000 a year again. And so that's kind of a really subtle undercurrent that's happening. I think, I don't know. Who do you think? Do you think any of these candidates would benefit from being the first one out of the gate, or do you got to wait until the rules are set up in February before you come out?
I think at this point, there might have been an advantage, all things being equal, to declaring last month and being, the person.
Right.
And obviously the favorite if they're the only declared candidate. At this point, where the rules are going to come out next month, I mean, I guess if one of these people said tomorrow, yes, I'm in this, I'm in it to win it, then we'd start talking about them because you have to, because it's news.
Yeah.
But we still don't know what the race is going to look like. And I appreciate they're probably waiting, by they I mean the party, to see what the pandemic looks like, because obviously they want the finale to line up with a place and time where they can have people in attendance. And that is worth waiting for, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But we don't know when that is. And so it behooves them to kind of like, well, let's just soft pedal it for another month. There's no rush.
Yeah.
The
only rush,
an interim leader in place.
Yeah. The only rush would have been like pre-Christmas when everyone's doing the year-end interviews.
Yeah.
Like if you had come out, let's say you had baggage that you wanted to get rid of. With Kevin Falcon, one of the questions is going to be like, how come you were smiling on that roast video with Jane Thornthwaite? For Todd Stone, it's going to be like, how can you run for leader when you screwed up ICBC? Or for Michael Lee, like, Mike, where have you been? Like, these are questions the media, like, you don't have to be Rob Shaw or you or Von Palmer to figure out the questions that the media are going to ask, right? Like, those are pretty. So it might have been good to come out, face those questions before Christmas when no one's really paying attention, but then you vetted them with the media. Like, okay, well, they had their pound of flesh and off we went. Now I think you're right. Like, I think now to drop, like, there is a benefit to being alone in a news cycle, several news cycles, but it's not like you can go out and start campaigning.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, you can't go anywhere. Certainly not now.
The benefit would be the initial media hit,
right.
And as you say, the round of interviews. But that's it, because they don't know the rules for campaigning and fundraising. I mean, they can't put really together a team based on anything other than spec right now. But because of the nature of 2021 and the pandemic, you're right. If you think that initial media hit is worth it, great. If not, let's just wait till next month.
But that's for the big four. That's for Falcon, Stone, Lee, and Ross. If you're one of these other four, I'm just thinking, like, if I'm Renee Merrifield, first-term MLA, the only thing the media know about me is that Bill Thielman kind of made me apologize for retweeting a tweet. Is it worth coming out now and being like, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm going to spend the next 2 weeks having Zoom calls with 87 riding presidents, and I'm thinking about it. Like, is there some value to that? It would certainly give the media something to talk about. It would certainly give.
It's a risk thing, because if you say, I'm thinking about it, and then the answer is anything other than a resounding, oh, you should definitely do it. If the public response is, that's not good.
Yeah,
so
but
you'd want to make sure that was lined up in advance.
But you could always be like, okay, well, you could do the weeks of meetings and then come out and say, Michael Lee is announced. I'm just thrilled that Michael Lee is announced. He is an incredible candidate, and I've decided I'm going to get behind him. And then, you actually provided value to the Michael Lee campaign, because here's someone who is a legitimate leadership candidate and, has decided to sign on. Kind of like Mike Bernier did in the last one, where Mike, I think Mike went to Wilkinson, didn't he?
DeYoung, I think.
Oh, did he? Oh, well, then never mind. It doesn't work. Bernie, what was happening there? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
Maybe he did. I can't remember. But if he went to Wilkinson, then it obviously worked, Bernie, and you should take all the credit. And if it was MDJ, I'm sorry for bringing it up. But yeah, like, maybe there's some. It's just you're trying to introduce yourself, not just to the media, but to the party at large. And if you're trying to get in to meet these riding presidents, like, okay, I'm Renee Merrifield. I'm the new health critic. I'm a Kelowna MLA. I sure like to sit down with your, on a Zoom call with your executive, Burnaby North, if there is still Burnaby North. Can we do that? Burnaby North will be like, what's going on here? But, you're thinking of running for leader. Okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's make a few calls and put a few people on the call. And maybe you charm them, maybe you wow them, maybe you pick up a volunteer or two, or at least an ambassador or two in the riding.
It's good advice. I mean, one of the names you mentioned, and I have no intel on this at all, but just as a hypothetical, you mentioned Gavin Dew,
right.
Who is a frequent contributor to the Orca and writes very well on the need for renewal in politics and the need to get more millennials involved. And the only reason I bring up Gavin is not because of his articles, which are great and you should read, but I don't know that the average voter in Burnaby, Fort St. John, Kelowna, downtown Vancouver, his name recognition is going to be less than some of the other candidates, only because he's never, I guess he did run once in a by-election. And so maybe for someone like him, it would be a good idea to go sooner rather than later. But I mean, equally, I'm going to contradict myself. He might need to have his ducks in a row first.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure these calculations are going on. Plus, like, if you're actually genuinely on the fence, which my last information was Gavin was generally on the fence, like, it takes work, and then you're investing all this work, but you're not going to do it. Like, that makes sense. Yeah. However, just think of Gavin's campaign slogans, right? Do the do. Just do it. Like, I'm all in just for the marketing possibilities.
There has to be at least
do
one
more
with that ear. Well, that's good. Do more.
We can do it better, baby. Maybe not baby.
Yeah.
Poor Gavin. Like, Gavin, his whole life, he's had this he's had this name, and he's heard it all, right? And this is his chance. Now he can put it to good use.
I never had that shot.
Yep. Well,
can't do a lot with K.
My kids, when they were little in my last campaign, but old enough to actually understand our last name, Bateman, they were always like, just drop the E and run as Batman. Who wouldn't vote for Batman? Oh, good point. Who wouldn't vote for Batman? I don't know.
That's fair.
I also have the dumbest campaign button of all time, which is Bateman is great man, but
Nice. Well, I like Batman's good, or even just like if you could do Bateman, but it looks like the button has accidentally cut off the E.
That's right.
So it's just like there's like a ghost of it there.
Yeah.
Not the counselor we deserve, but the one we need right now.
Exactly. Yeah. He's going to live long enough to become the villain. One day we should talk about like great election signs we've seen. Like my friend Charlie Fox. He resisted putting a fox on his sign when he ran for township council several times in Langley, but he put F-O and then the X was like in a box. Like X.
Oh, that's good.
Which I always like.
Yeah.
There was a woman named Michelle Sparrow who was elected to council here in Langley 2 terms. She had a little sparrow on her sign, which then sparked a whole bunch of other signs, like Angie Qualley had one that she was the only one with Q, so her signs were just Qs everywhere. But the best one I ever saw was back in the 90s, I think. A councillor named Beck was running in Abbotsford for Abbotsford Council, and he won a few times. But his signs were Beck to the future. And it was like the Back to the Future logo. Yeah, I always liked that. I was always jealous.
The one that sticks out for me is an Alberta example. I want to say the early 2000s. He was the NDP leader in Alberta, either NDP or Alberta Liberal. Anyway, his signs, it was Raj Panu was his name, and the signs all said Raj Against the Machine.
Oh, yes!
They were good. They were good signs. I think he was the NDP leader.
Oh my gosh. Outstanding.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Good stuff.
All right, well, that's all I got. You wound me up enough here.
Another double episode this week, which is only fair because we missed the last couple because I was selfishly taking a break in British Columbia.
We're just tiding people over till Unspun shows up, and then Rob starts next week, and then everyone can go back to ignoring me. And
it's true. We are the sprig of parsley on the plate of steak that is the Orca in our podcast.
What do you think? So just before we go, Rob Shaw starts next week. What do you think he's going to write? Like, what's he got going? Anything exciting? What's going to happen?
I can neither confirm nor deny. We have discussed some potential topics, but we'll just leave it in anticipation. He's here's the thing, like people don't need to overthink this. Rob Shaw's going to write like Rob Shaw. I mean, there's a reason that he is the most highly regarded reporter in BC.
Yeah.
It's like why would he change?
Exactly.
I don't want to. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, Rob's going to continue being Rob Shaw, and that is a huge get for us.
Yeah, no, I'm totally excited about what's happening on the platform this year, and feel very honored to be a part of it and to be the random talking head at the very end. Oh, I forgot to mention one other thing on the leadership list. I understand Tamara Taggart has ruled herself out.
Yes, I had heard that rumor as well.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, well, until next week, and it is next week, we'll be back. My name is Maclean K. That's Jordan Bateman. Happy politics.